There are many reoccurring plot points in the Harry Potter series, from the rule of 7 to the power of love always conquering, the running theme of bad parents, and of course the thing that we're going to talk about in this video, how there's a new defense against the dark arts teacher every year. But why is that? Is it just a coincidence, or was there somebody behind this? In this video, I'm going to answer all of those questions and explain everything that you need to know about the defense against the dark arts job. Before we start, I just wanted to say that I'm going to stop using the YouTube community tab as much as I have been and start using other platforms more so that the Movie Flame brand extends past just YouTube, just in case the worst happened and I lost the channel or something. So make sure you follow me on Twitter, which is the most important, because that will sort of replace the YouTube community tab. I'll be posting the most updates there, and that's linked down below. You can also follow us on Facebook, and if you want, you can follow my personal Instagram as well, which is full of cute dogs, behind the scenes Movie Flame stuff, and just some fun posts. Both of those are linked down below as well. Now, let's get started. Quirrell, Gilderoy Lockhart, Remus Lupin, Mad-Eye Moody, or Barty Crouch Jr., Dolores Umbridge, Severus Snape, and Amicus Carrow. These are the names of all of the Defense Against the Dark Arts teachers over the 7 years that the books took place, and none of them made it longer than 1 year, and a lot of them ended up getting a fate that was pretty horrible.
Harry, this is Professor Quirrell. He'll be your Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher.
Many believe that Quirrell had been a teacher at Hogwarts for a few years before Harry arrived, but this is incorrect. He was actually new to Hogwarts and had spent the previous year of his life studying abroad in Albania, where he of course met Voldemort, or at least what was left of Voldemort after he tried to kill Harry 10 years before this. Quirrell was manipulated by the Dark Lord just like so many before him, and Voldemort convinced him to attach what was left of his body to him before he went to teach at Hogwarts. He wore a turban to cover Voldemort's face, and he pretended to have a stutter, making him look innocent when he came to school. While at school, he attempted to steal the Philosopher's Stone to give it to Voldemort so he could get a real body, but he paid for this with his life. So the fate of the first DADA teacher, and a brutal and painful death from magical 4th degree burns.
Let me introduce you to your new Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher. Me.
The second DADA teacher was Gilderoy Lockhart, a celebrity who was a complete and utter fraud, taking credit for other wizards' accomplishments. Dumbledore of course saw right through him, but he hired him anyway because he was the only one who showed interest in the job position. Hagrid told the trio, and I quote, "Getting very difficult to find anyone for the dark arts job. People aren't too keen to take it on, see? They're starting to think it's jinxed. No one's lasted long for a while now." All the other teachers knew that he was a fraud, and to get rid of him, and to slightly make fun of him, they sent him on his way to save Ginny from the beast in the Chamber of Secrets. Harry and Ron forced him to follow through with this, and while down there, Lockhart tried to wipe Harry and Ron's memories, but he did it with a broken wand that shot back at him, and he wiped his own memory. After this, he became a permanent resident at St. Mungo's Hospital after they tried very hard to restore his memory, but with no luck. In his time there, he got no visitors, but he did get fan mail occasionally, but he had no idea what these fans were writing to him about. So the second DADA teacher's fate, permanent memory loss, and spending the rest of his life in St. Mungo's permanent spell damage ward having no clue of who he was. After this, there were rumors of the job being jinxed, and there had been for years, but the fate of the last two teachers really made people scared to take on the job. Luckily, Dumbledore found a good replacement.
Then speak the incantation Expecto Patronum.
Expecto Patronum.
Very good.
The third DADA teacher was Remus Lupin, and he was without a doubt the best of the 7 during the Potter series. After the first few weeks of classes, Defense Against the Dark Arts quickly became everybody's favorite subject thanks to Lupin, and the students were actually learning something in the class for the first time in a while. Even Madame Pomfrey was impressed when she learned that he had given the kids chocolate on the Hogwarts Express after a Dementor attack, saying that they finally had a DADA teacher who knew his remedies. Severus Snape, however, fought against disappointment from the start, not wanting one of his schoolboy rivals back at Hogwarts. Snape tried to sabotage him by teaching about werewolves when he took over Lupin's lessons while he was sick, hoping that someone would put together that Lupin himself was a werewolf. Hermione was the only one to realize, however, and she liked Lupin so much that she kept it a secret. The fate of the third DADA teacher was mild compared to the first two. He was exposed for being a werewolf to the entire wizarding world by Snape. Before, Lupin could hide what he was, but now it was published all over that Dumbledore had hired Remus Lupin, a known werewolf, and Lupin had no choice but to resign. Because the world now knew what he was, it made it almost impossible for Lupin to find a new job, but comparing his fate to the two professors before him, I think he got off easy.
I am here because Dumbledore asked me. End of story. Goodbye, the end.
The fourth Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher was a bit different than the others, because Mad-Eye Moody had no intention of staying just 1 year. He was coming on as a favor to Dumbledore as he could not find a replacement for Lupin, but the main reason why he got the job was because Dumbledore knew that former Death Eater Igor Karkaroff would be at Hogwarts all year for the Triwizard Tournament, and he wanted Mad-Eye Moody, perhaps the best Auror or dark wizard catcher to ever live, to be there. Dumbledore got some hate for this, however, and in one article, Rita Skeeter wrote, "Dumbledore has never been afraid to make controversial staff appointments. In September of this year, he hired Alastor Mad-Eye Moody, the notoriously jinx-happy ex-Auror, to teach Defense Against the Dark Arts, a decision that caused many raised eyebrows at the Ministry of Magic, given Moody's well-known habit of attacking anybody who makes a sudden movement in his presence." Little did anybody know, Alastor Moody did not teach a single class, as he was abducted the night before he left for Hogwarts by Barty Crouch Jr. and Wormtail, and they locked Moody up in his own chest, while Barty Crouch Jr. used Polyjuice Potion and assumed Moody's identity. So the fate of the fourth DADA teacher was being locked up for 9 months, only seeing light when Barty Crouch Jr. took his hair for the Polyjuice Potion, or to update his Imperious Curse on Moody to make him do his bidding. His fate wasn't as bad as the first two, because he made a full recovery, but it was definitely a good deal worse than Lupin's fate.
The Ministry of Magic has always considered the education of young witches and wizards to be of vital importance.
This year, Cornelius Fudge, a corrupt and idiotic minister who thought that Dumbledore was after his job, wanted to infiltrate Hogwarts from the inside, and he passed a law that said if Dumbledore could not find a teacher, he himself could choose for him, and he had his most trusted advisor, Dolores Umbridge, take up the job. Fudge's main reason for sending her was because he thought that Dumbledore was using his students to create an army to overthrow him, and by having Umbridge there, he not only had a rat, but she also ensured that the DADA classes would not train the students in combat, and she stuck strictly to textbook learning, ignoring all practical spell work. It could also be argued that Harry was sort of a DADA teacher that year as well, as he taught a good chunk of students real Defense Against the Dark Arts in secret with the group Dumbledore's Army. And once again, he only lasted 1 year in the position, just like all of the other DADA teachers, as never again did he run Dumbledore's Army's lessons after that year. The fate of the 5th DADA teacher was being hauled away by a herd of centaurs. They kept her bound and helpless, and were going to kill her eventually. Luckily for Umbridge, Dumbledore went into the forest to rescue her before they got the chance to kill her. Umbridge had terrible PTSD, however. It was so bad that when Ron made click-clacking noises in the hospital wing, she sat bolt upright terrified. Like Moody, however, she made a full recovery.
You applied first for the Defense Against the Dark Arts post, is that correct?
Yes.
But you were unsuccessful?
Obviously.
The 6th DADA teacher was Severus Snape. It was common knowledge that Snape had wanted the job for years, and most thought that Dumbledore never allowed him to have it because he didn't want his love for the dark arts to trigger his old Death Eater ways. This made Harry question why Dumbledore was allowing Snape to do it now, because nothing had really changed. He still could be triggered by the job. Harry even noted that as Snape spoke in his first class, Snape not only respected the dark arts as a dangerous enemy, but he spoke of them with a loving passion in his voice. However, Snape's appointment had a lot of meaning behind it and a lot of planning. Dumbledore actually gave Snape this position to force him to complete a task that he had given him. Before we get into that, however, let's go back a few decades and focus on one person that many might not pair with the Defense Against the Dark Arts job, Tom Riddle, aka Lord Voldemort. When Voldemort finished school, he asked the then headmaster, Professor Dippet, for the Defense Against the Dark Arts job, wanting to replace Galatea Merrythought, who had been at that post for nearly 50 years. Dippet, however, told Tom that he was too young and said to reapply in a few years. So Voldemort did just that and came back a few years later to the now headmaster, Albus Dumbledore. Tom had changed over the years, mostly in appearance. His features that were once handsome now looked burned and blurred. His face was waxy and oddly distorted, and the whites of his eyes now had a permanently bloody look. Based on Tom's appearance, and Dumbledore just knowing all, he knew that Tom had dug deep into the darkest of magic, and he had heard rumors of the horrors that Voldemort had committed over the past few years. Not wanting to expose his students to a man like this, Dumbledore refused to give him the job. He had seen the real Tom Riddle when he went to see him at the orphanage, as on that day, Tom revealed more than he should have of his psychopathic way of thinking, something that he had hid from everyone else from then on, knowing that he had shown Dumbledore too much of his dark side. Dumbledore refused to call him Voldemort, calling him Tom instead, which greatly annoyed him, and Dumbledore called him out, naming things that Voldemort had done over the years, things that Voldemort did not expect Dumbledore to know about. After Voldemort was shut down and flat out rejected for the job, he stood up and stormed out. Before leaving, however, Voldemort did two things. One, he placed one of his Horcruxes, to be more specific, Ravenclaw's diadem, in the Room of Requirement. And two, I'll explain with a quote from the book. Harry asked Dumbledore, "Was he after the Defense Against the Dark Arts job again, sir?" He didn't say. Oh, he definitely wanted the Defense Against the Dark Arts job. The aftermath of our little meeting proved that. You see, we have never been able to keep a Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher for longer than a year since I refused the post to Lord Voldemort. So this means that after being rejected, Voldemort jinxed the job, making it so every year something would happen or it would be planned from the start that anyone who got the job would only last 1 year. It turns out that the rumors of the job being jinxed were actually true, but I'm sure that no one could have guessed who was responsible for it. Going back to Snape, this jinx is the real reason why Dumbledore did not allow Snape to have the DADA job, because he knew that if he gave it to Snape, Snape would be forced out of the position. So, when he finally did give it to him, it forced Snape to finish the mission that he had promised Dumbledore he would fulfill, to keep Harry alive until he had to die. By forcing him into this job, it made it so Snape could not continue to teach Defense Against the Dark Arts the following year, or take on his old position of Potions Master, as Dumbledore had replaced him with Horace Slughorn, and therefore, this would force Snape to kill Dumbledore as he promised he would before the start of the school year.
You must be the one to kill me, Severus. It is the only way. Only then will the Dark Lord trust you completely.
Have you ever considered that you ask too much, that you take too much for granted? Has it ever crossed your brilliant mind that I don't want to do this anymore?
Whether it has or hasn't is irrelevant. You agreed. Nothing more to discuss.
The fate of the 6th DADA teacher, to kill a dear friend and to risk his life being a double agent under Voldemort's nose. Snape would of course go on to be headmaster after Dumbledore died and Voldemort took over, and Amicus Carroll would take on the role of the Defense Against the Dark Arts professor. He too would only last 1 year, and the fate of the 7th DADA teacher was to spend the rest of his life in Azkaban prison. After Voldemort died in the Battle of Hogwarts, the jinx was lifted. The jinx lasted from the start of the 1965 school year and ended at the end of the 1997 school year as the Battle of Hogwarts took place in 1998. So because of Voldemort's jinx, there were 33 Defense Against the Dark Arts teachers who only lasted a year. The ones we know about were Galatea Merrythought, who presumably lost her job after Voldemort made the jinx, Quirrell, who died, Gilderoy Lockhart, who lost his memory and spent the rest of his life in St. Mungo's, Remus Lupin, who was exposed as a werewolf to the world, Mad-Eye Moody, who was locked in a trunk for 9 months, Dolores Umbridge, who was taken by a herd of centaurs and almost killed, Severus Snape, who was forced to kill Dumbledore and flee with the Death Eaters, risking his life being a double agent under Lord Voldemort's nose, and Amicus Carroll, who spent the rest of his life in Azkaban. It's safe to say that most would not want to take on this job after all of that. Thank you so much for watching, guys. You can follow me on social media to see more of my personal life and see more of this little dude. You can follow me on Twitter and Facebook for Movie Flame updates. And I want to give a huge shout out to all my patrons listed below. If you want to be featured in the next video, plus get a bunch of other rewards, become a patron today. Again, thank you so much for watching. Make sure you press that like button and subscribe, and look out for more great videos on the way.